When soil stopped producing, ancient farmers did not always haul compost or animal waste. In many regions, they reached instead for specific beans that had earned a reputation over centuries for restoring exhausted ground with remarkable speed. These were not grown primarily for food. They were grown as living tools. The result was soil recovery in a single season, sometimes faster than compost could ever manage. This guide explores how those beans worked, why they were favoured historically, and how the same approach can be applied today with precision and intent. How early civilizations discovered that beans could rebuild soil from the inside out. Long before nitrogen was identified as an element, farmers noticed a pattern. Fields planted with certain legumes yielded better harvests the following year, even when no fertilizer was added. Roman agricultural writers described this effect in detail, as did medieval European monks and farmers in ancient China. The explanation lay underground. These beans formed partnerships with soil bacteria that pulled nitrogen from the air and locked it into the soil in a plant-usable form. This was not theoretical knowledge. It was observed, repeated, and relied upon across generations. Why did these ancient beans work faster than compost in damaged soil? Well, compost improves soil by adding organic matter, but it depends on decomposition, which honestly takes time. Ancient soil-restoring beans worked differently. They actually manufactured fertility while alive. As they grew, their roots fed microbial communities that, in turn, transformed inert nitrogen into living nutrients. The soil improved while the plants were still standing. In compacted or nutrient-starved ground, this immediate biological activity really mattered more than slow material breakdown. So, which beans did ancient farmers rely on when, speed really mattered? Well, historical records point repeatedly to fava beans, field peas, cowpeas, and vetches. These particular beans were chosen not for their yield, but rather for their aggressive root systems and strong nitrogen-fixing capacity. Fava beans, for instance, were especially prized in cold climates because they grew early and could penetrate heavy soils. Cowpeas, on the other hand, dominated in warm regions for their ability to thrive in poor ground, while at the same time feeding it. These crops were often grown quite dense and cut down before maturity, returning their nutrients directly to the soil. So, how was the method applied step by step in traditional systems? Well, the process began by sowing beans directly into depleted soil with minimal preparation. Farmers avoided heavy tillage, understanding that soil life needed stability. Seeds were planted thickly to maximize root coverage. Watering was light, but, consistent, until the plants were well established. Once the plants reached flowering, though before seed formation could drain nutrients upward, they were cut right at the base. The roots, they were left in the soil to decay slowly, releasing nitrogen exactly where future crops would need it. The tops were either laid flat as surface cover or, depending on the system, removed for animal feed. Within just a few weeks, soil texture improved noticeably. Why leaving the roots mattered more than, say, burying plant material. Ancient farmers learned that pulling plants out actually wasted much of the benefit. The root nodules were, in fact, the true engines of fertility. As they decomposed underground, they fed bacteria and fungi, improving soil structure and nutrient availability at the same time. This is why these beans repaired soil faster than compost applied on the surface. The improvement began below ground, not above it. How this practice transformed fields without external inputs. In regions where manure was scarce or reserved for high-value crops, legumes were the backbone of soil fertility. Rotations were designed around them. A grain crop would follow a bean year, producing higher yields without added fertilizer. This system, actually sustained agriculture for centuries without any chemical inputs at all, relying entirely on biological processes. So, how can modern gardeners apply the same method with, precision? First, choose a nitrogen-fixing bean that's suited to your particular climate. Then plant it directly into problem soil rather than into amended beds. Allow it to grow vigorously, really focusing on leaf and root development rather than, say, harvest. When flowering begins, you should cut the plants at soil level. And just so you know, it's important to leave the roots untouched. Now, wait for about 2 to 3 weeks before planting the next crop. This gives enough time for partial decomposition and nutrient release. Interestingly, this timing actually mirrors ancient practice and helps to prevent nutrient lockup. So, why does this work even in heavily degraded soil? Well, beans do not require fertile soil to begin working. Their microbial partners supply much of what they need. This allows them to colonize poor ground and, initiate recovery where compost alone might struggle. In survival or low-input gardening, this makes them, invaluable. Why ancient farmers considered this knowledge too important to forget? Soil was inheritance. So, a field passed down in poor condition, it really threatened family survival. These beans, you see, were like insurance, restoring land reliably and, importantly, without cost. Modern agriculture, forgot this not because it failed, but really because industrial inputs replaced patience and observation. Now, why does this method still outperform compost in specific situations? Compost, of course, builds long-term structure, but when soil is biologically dead or, say, nitrogen-starved, legumes act much faster. They restart nutrient cycles instead of waiting for them to resume. Used together, they are, quite powerful. Used alone, beans often win the race. Why, this is ancient wisdom worth restoring now. As fertilizer prices rise and soil exhaustion spreads, these forgotten methods regain relevance. They are not trends. They are tested systems that honestly sustained civilizations. If you value this kind of practical historical knowledge and want more guides grounded in real agricultural history, do consider subscribing to Botanical Bliss and share this with others who care about soil that lasts for generations.